Welcome, and thanks for joining me on this intrepid journey as we explore and uncover mysterious and elusive tales of some of the world's most famous, lost and forgotten treasures. There's something about treasure and the act of seeking it that has intrigued humanity since time began. From ancient rituals to buried pirate treasure to hoards of fascinating and mystical artifacts acquired through war and brutal conquests, through to tracing our history in order to understand our past. I have long been fascinated by treasure and the journeys in which humanity has long embarked on in order to acquire it. The search for historical clues, precious materials, and immense knowledge. But for me, it's more about the immersive stories than the riches and power sought out by the explorers who seek such treasures. Because, for the majority, it's only the stories, myths, and legends that in the end remain, while the rest is lost to history. And in some way, it's fascinating in itself, as it opens the doors for further stories to be retold. So you see, the real treasures are the stories themselves. In this episode, we'll be saddling up as we prepare to join the stampede on an 800-year-old manhunt, going in search of clues and legends to elaborate on a treasure that potentially lies with the world's most fearless warrior. A warrior who scarred history so deeply that it is said 1 in 200 people are directly descended from his bloodline, and that it's also suggested that the resting place of the world's greatest warrior is shrouded by a legend of rare and precious metals, never-before-seen relics, and primitively exquisite jewelry, treasures of which are told to be eternally guarded by the cursed nomadic warrior himself. And with that said, let's embark on this cryptic and elusive story together. The Tomb of Genghis Khan. As most ancient stories begin, this tale too also originates with much debate as to its timeline, and in this case, relating to the birth date of the world's greatest warrior, said to have been sometime between 1155 and 1167, though some accounts attempt to pinpoint 1162, a year which would bear the Chinese zodiac symbol of the horse, which would certainly be fitting. Regardless, its matter of fact is barely a keystone in what time itself would resolve. It is told that the becoming fearless warrior was born into a small nomadic tribe, the Bordigan clan. His birthplace said to have been at the clan's camp in Dalun Boldog on the 641-mile-long Onan River, as recounted within the pages of the secret history of Mongols. Born the eldest child to Yasuge, chieftain of the clan, and his wife, Hoelun of the Olkanids. Presented at birth with his given name, Temujin, the roots of which, Temur, simply mean iron, roots which also appeared in the names of 2 of his siblings. Moreover, it is said that Temujin in its entirety plainly means blacksmith. To encroach further on the mysteries surrounding Temujin's birth, multiple other legends grace the great warrior's origins. One of the most foretold tales telling that of during his birth, Temujin was said to have been delivered clutching that of a ruby-red blood clot in his hand, and as Asian folklore would see it, depicted that the new arrival was destined to someday become a great warrior. Forward beyond Temujin's entrance into the world, at around 8 years of age, Temujin would experience the early loss of his father, the nomadic boy after traveling distance with his father Yasuge to establish his arranged marriage to a young girl by the name of Borte, the ties of which would bring strong allies to the family tribe. Yasuge, after accepting the terms of Temujin's betrothal to the daughter of the Ongarat chieftain, who would negotiate as part of the arrangement that the nomadic youngling remained behind with his tribe and be put to work to pay off his future bride's dowry. Now, upon Yasuge's journey to return to his own tribe's camp, would, at a point, meet and share a meal with a group of taters, following the step tradition of which recognised hospitality to strangers, the group of whom were, unfortunately for Yasuge, a group whose intentions were not at all what they seemed, recognising the weary traveller as an enemy from their past, an enemy now plotting their opportunity for revenge. As such, would see the group of taters slipping poison into what would become one of Yasuge's last meals. And after his setting off on the arduous final leg home, Yasuge would slowly begin to fall ill, and despite making it back to his tribe's camp, would only a few days later meet his death as a result of the vengeful poisoning. However, not before the chieftain made request to a trusted retainer by the name of Munglig to recover Temujin from the Ongurrat arrangement, ensuring his return to the family tribe. The chieftain's death, an event of which would spark a significant divide among the tribespeople, where a previous Mongol Khan of an allied faction would come to exclude Temujin's mother from ancestral ceremonies, later leading to the self-elected Khan and the tribespeople abandoning the now excluded widow, along with Yasuge's brothers, remaining loyalists, as well as her 4 sons to fend for themselves, now forced to take on a fight-or-flight hunter-gatherer lifestyle, foraging, fishing, and hunting small game to survive. With that said, now that we've had a glimpse from atop the horse's saddle and followed the path of the arrowhead which points to the origin of the youngling Mongol, who would later grow to become a fearless man, a warrior who would ultimately unite separated Mongolia and command rule over an empire which would span from the eastern edge of China to the Adriatic Sea. And with that, we can once again saddle up and go in search of further clues following the trampled path on which the great warrior travelled. On the banks of the Onan River, where the Mongol youngling learned how to ride a horse and shoot a bow, Temujin and his now abandoned siblings grew up under the guard of their widowed mother, as well as the few loyals who remained behind with the now excluded tribe faction. However, as time began to pass, the need to re-establish hierarchy became ever more present, with tensions tightening almost to the point of fracturing, as Temujin and his elder half-sibling Bekta began to compete for claim to their father's right as Khan. A time during which tensions stretched thinner between the two, and the potential looming threat that Bekta, his elder half-brother, could attain a majority following in the tribe by marrying Hoylan, Temujin's mother, under steppe law, the results of which would evoke disputes over pecking order, hunting spoils, and other tribal rights. Despite Hoylan furiously reprimanding her sons, Temujin and his younger sibling Quasar took action to end the impending threat on their position, ambushing Bekta, killing him, ultimately putting an end to any further dispute. From that point forward, the tides began to turn, as unity began to take focus, and as the tribe lacked credible allies, Temujin executed his strategy to reclaim his birthright, gradually building up a small following with 2 other Mongol chieftains, who engaged in campaigns to unite further Mongol tribes. However, these alliances failed to cement and eventually broke down, raising dispute that ended with internal fighting, during the course of which saw Temujin taking action to defeat both the once-aligned chieftains, claiming sole rule once again over the Mongol tribes. An event that in 1206 led to Temujin formally adopting his now infamous title as the great warrior history has come to know him by, Genghis Khan. Now backed by a substantial and united tribe, the great Khan would begin his bloody campaign and set off on his conquest to eliminate all those who now stood in the way of a united Mongolia. Bringing his first victim into submission by 1211, decimating the Western Xia state, then in 1214, invading the Jin dynasty in northern China, forcing the hand of the Jin emperor to retract from the northern region of his kingdom, striking again in 1218 by defeating the Karakitai Khanate, the results of which would provide the girth of forces Genghis needed to invade the adjacent Khwarezmian Empire in the following year of 1219. His furious campaigns even reaching as far as Georgia and the Kievan Rus. During Genghis Khan's rule, the great warrior's conquest caused widespread destruction as his Mongol powerhouse, renowned for its discipline and maneuverability, moved like a tidal wave across the landscape. His forces responsible for the deaths of millions throughout his campaigns. Genghis himself, a fearless master of deception, using every tactic at his disposal to evade and confront his enemies, taunting at the scale and power of his army, also by way of propaganda to infect his foes with fear. Depictions of which can be seen in the intensely gripping TV series Marco Polo, first released in 2014. Despite the victories the great warrior would claim, Genghis Khan would meet his final fate in 1227, a fate believed to have been during the time of the assault and campaign against the Western Xia capital. And while the details of his death remain somewhat of a mystery, with mystic tales that tell that he was struck by lightning, others killed by a vengeful queen, as well as being brought down by infection from an arrow wound, as suggested in writings by Marco Polo, with even more recent stories subject to studies that suggest he most likely contracted bubonic plague. However, according to the secret history of Mongols, the great Genghis took a fall from his horse while hunting, the Khan falling victim to the injuries sustained. As to the actual date of his death, also topic of much debate, the majority believed it to have been on the 18th of August, despite being documented in the secret history as being the 25th. As for the burial site and tomb of the great Genghis Khan, along with the presumed treasures within, the mystery and legend is only the beginning. And with strict nomadic taboos revolving around discussions of death, very few records exist on such topics, leaving much of the legends to the imaginations of those who came along to predict such tales long after the great Khan's passing. As such, there have been uncountable efforts to seek the elusive tomb of Genghis Khan, of which is said to have been sought after by grave robbers, archaeologists, explorers, and enthusiasts alike, most searches of which have been focused in the area of the great Khan's birthplace, as, according to the secret history, Genghis would often worship and seek refuge in the area, declaring that a mountain in the area was the most sacred place in all of Mongolia, and, most interestingly, it is told that Genghis Khan exclaimed that his remains were to be buried there after his passing. One of the most recognized searchers in the hunt for Genghis Khan's resting place, an American amateur archaeologist, Moray Kravitz, who spent 40 years trying to seek the tomb, is reportedly said to have abandoned one particular excavation attempt, while during the mission, a series of near-fatal events took place. Stories of expedition team members being bitten by pit viper snakes and vehicles unexplainably releasing their brakes and rolling off hills, with no explanation as to the nature of the events, which suggest that the area and tomb is forever cursed. However, another key researcher and expert on Tibet and China, Alan Nicholas, an 86-year-old attorney and self-confessed explorer, is himself convinced that Genghis Khan's tomb lies elsewhere, and, as accounts would support it, all attempts committed to seeking the tomb in the area of Genghis Khan's birth have all turned out to be dead ends. Moreover, it is told that the great Khan left concise instructions with his most trusted that his remains were to be left eternally undisturbed, leading to ideas that he carefully ensured his tomb would never be discovered, with one of the legends that support this idea suggesting that in order to guard the location of his tomb and final resting place, that the 1,000 members of his great army who escorted the Khan's body along with his afterlife treasures to the burial site, were all sacrificed to prevent any disclosure of its location. Furthermore, those who committed the initial sacrificial killings were also themselves sacrificed, tightening the seal on the Khan's cursed tomb. For now, the world's greatest warrior remains undisturbed in his final resting place, along with his most precious belongings, as the legend of the cursed remains continue to evade being discovered by all those who go in search. And as to what treasures lie with the great Khan is up to the imaginations of those who seek the truth, leaving us with only one idea to ponder, that the treasure of Genghis Khan's tomb is without doubt worthy of a lost and forgotten treasure. Well, as it presents itself, the story, legend, and myth of the world's greatest warrior offers little more than a thread of conflicting tales and victorious stories of the lost and forgotten tomb of Genghis Khan. Throughout this immensely grave journey, we are presented again with more taboo questions than recoverable answers. At the same time, we have been and remain mesmerized by the story. Join me next time for another episode of Lost and Forgotten Treasures. I'm your intrepid storyteller. Lost and Forgotten Treasures is an audiocast written and produced by me, Roger Adams, with the help, of course, from the internet, whose archives from multiple contributors have allowed me to research, interpret, and retell these stories. I hope you've enjoyed traveling with me through time, and whether you found some answers, liberated your ears, or merely just found this story intriguing, I hope you'll join me on the next. For now, keep searching for your treasure, whatever it may be. Until next time.